Game loaded.
Sorry. Hi, and welcome to an edition of Lessons Learned with myself and our friend Chapomon. We come
Hi.
we come to the end of the year, and we're gonna be talking about some of the news and other stuff that happened in the first 6 months of the year in this program, and then the other 6 months we're gonna be talking about it in the next program, which should be, as always, on 9 Eastern time, um, 6 Central American time, if I'm correct. And we're gonna be discussing that. So let's get started. Let's get started with some of the news. In January, the thing about the news, of course, is that some of these things are, you have big blast of news, and then nothing really happens, and then something else happens. January was, according to my sources, the reveal of the Nintendo Switch, which later would come out that year. It was up to that point the NX. Um, it was also the month that the Wii U production of the Wii U ceased to be. So apparently, they were, that confirmed that the sorry that that Nintendo was going full speed on that of the new console. For games, we have a lot of releases. Well, we don't have a lot of releases. I think the big release were Gravity Rush 2, um, Kingdoms of Heart HD 2.08 Final Chapter Prologue for PlayStation 4 came out.
uh,
Uh, Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, which was what- thought that was a breath of fresh air compared to the previous uh, Resident Evil. But the one I think stuck in people's mind at the time was Yakuza 0, which recently was
yeah.
a re-release. And the thing about it was that about Yakuza 0 was that a lot of people who hadn't played any Yakuza games, especially in the West, were like, "Oh my God, these games are great. These games are funny." But they've been available in the West, I think, from Yakuza 3 onwards.
Yeah, something like that.
And so it's like, well, yes, they're being available, and here we are, and sort of it has allowed people to rediscover that, and it's also been the divide between the Western market and Japanese market. Like a lot of quirky, unique games come out of the Japanese market, which is a smaller market but still successful market, and never make it to the West for a variety of reasons. Most of them have to do with trademarks and the like. Like for me, I'm a fan of Macross, the animated series, and most of that doesn't make it to the US because there's a huge mess with the rights holders from Robotech and some of the right holders from the old FASA games, which are now BattleTech, and some other people, and so they never can agree with us. So the Robo Fighter games and all that, you can't get them in the states unless you port them to your system.
Yeah. Um, and especially a lot of RPGs.
Hmm.
Seems like Japan's very RPG heavy.
Yeah, they're very much into the storytelling, right? Especially trying to craft in the very Japanese way stories and using video games as a method to do that, which I personally don't agree with. But on the other hand, they push the envelope, right?
Yeah.
They're pushing the envelope. They do things. I think the problem with that to me is like the games that do come out for the West are the ones that are more have to be more so action orientated, because a lot of the stuff is mostly an anime or a movie. Visual novels
Yeah.
are big in Japan, and they're one of the big. They weren't not necessarily invented by them, but certainly they pushed the genre as forward, because again it's about using interactivity to tell a story. Regardless of how I feel about it, that's how they do things, and they're popular both in Japan and in the West. But again, a lot of the concepts and ideas, especially because a lot of the things said to have either extreme violence or nudity, especially underage female nudity.
Yeah.
Doesn't translate right to the West.
I'm constantly seeing really strange RPGs for the PlayStation Vita. I always shake my head. I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. Oh, yeah, never mind. I'm just gonna tab out of that.
Yeah, that tends to happen quite a bit. That was for January. Some of the news. So we go to February then. February, some of the news, according to my sources, a lot of acquisitions. But one important news was Peter Moore steps down from EA, head of EA Sports, to become CEO of Liverpool Football Club. And I think that's interesting because Peter Moore had been with EA for a very long time. And perhaps it signaled a change of pace for him. It's like, I'm done with video games, basically. And the fact that he would go to Liverpool Football Club actually signals the closeness that sports video games are highly tied to the sports themselves. Like we discussed many times. We discussed it in the last episode and last week and many times before. For the average sports fan, the video game is an extension of their fandom, of their sports fandom, rather than the other way around. And so, to us in the video game industry, it might seem a bit might be weird that Peter Moore would go to Liverpool, but perhaps from the point of view somebody who plays, who is a fan of international football, they go like, okay, it's part of the continuum, right?
Yeah. Hey, as long as he's happy, he's I think it's great. Mm-hmm. It's certainly not a strange switch to the two doctors from that started up BioWare. They started off as like actual doctors of some sort, and then formed their own video game company. Then after the whole Mass Effect 3 debacle, they left the company, and I believe last I heard that they had their own like brewing company now, brew beer.
Yeah.
So I mean, those are like all three of those are big changes.
Yeah, but I think basically they just got tired of the video game industry, which I don't blame them, considering all the things that happened. February had some very interesting releases. Neo for the PS4. For Honor, which was one of the first games of the year, which was a big multiplayer microtransaction, fee to play, right? So you pay for the game and then you have tons of microtransactions for Ubisoft. Sniper Elite 4, which was well received, and Halo Wars 2, which kind of signaled Halo, basically another game for Halo, and people are kind of getting tired of Halo, except for that, the hardcore fans of Halo. And you also have two games that were, I don't know, checking. It says here that Torment Tides of Numenera was released on February, but most of the people talking about it now are talking about it later on the year. Most of the reviews I've seen have come in later on. So apparently it was the kind of game that everybody a couple of years ago were expecting, because Torment was made by some of the same people that made the D&D version, which was Planescape Torment. And Torment Tides of Numenera is one of those games that has followed the tradition of, asymmetric third person. Asymmetric is not third person. Western CRPGs in the vein of Baldur's Gate and the original Fallout and Fallout 2 and the like. But this one, it was done by inXile Entertainment. One of the things about it was that it was a crowdsourced game. I don't know how. Let me check the numbers here. How so far has been? It says it was a Unity engine game, which is common for these type of games. Pre-rendered in a 2.5 isometric perspective with pre-rendered environments. And Monty Cook, which one of the designers of Dungeons and Dragons, especially Dungeons and Dragons Third Edition, which was very popular in the opening of the 2000s, made the rule set for it, which had been released a couple of years ago, and it was called the Ninth World Setting. And it has a lot of dialogue tricks. It's very, very classic type. Let me see what was the reception.
Wow. I saw that they initially expected the game to be released in December of 2014, but it didn't get released till 2017.
Yeah. The scores,
that's quite a delay.
The scores are okay. You have your 7s, you have your 8s, no 9s. And your Metacritic's put in between 75 to 80, which was received okay. If in the aggregate. And it's also okay. Yeah, it also was released for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, which is very interesting for a isometric game like that, which in the past were almost PC exclusive.
Yeah, I think we're slowly seeing a lot of that in crowdsourced games, that they'll slowly, if they're not initially planned to be released in consoles, that they slowly, after they find a successful audience, that they'll kind of push themselves into console games. But only once they're kind of done patching most of the game. We saw this with Divinity Original Sin 1. They sort of repatched it, then they kind of re-released it in an enhanced version. I believe that's the version that the consoles got. We're sort of seeing that with a game that we'll later probably discuss, that came out, and they've recently announced that their Switch version, I think it's coming out this month. But we'll save that for when it comes out. Hi, Chewy.
And then we have Neo, and the thing about Neo was that it was made by Team Ninja, primarily as a PlayStation game. It's still PlayStation exclusive, but it was very popular on streaming early in the year. One of those games that really captured the imagination of streamers and their followers a lot, and which leads us to another PlayStation game, which I wish they still released the PC version of. They promised it, and that's Horizon Zero Dawn from Guerrilla Games. And what makes Horizon Zero Dawn is that essentially is one of these, again, AA games, because it was published by Sony Entertainment, but was made by Guerrilla Games, and it was done. And some people will make Killzone 3, so they're very much in the AAA space, of course. But this game was, it's gorgeous. Yeah. I've seen it. I wish. If I were to get a PS4, I would get it to play Horizon Zero Dawn. And I think it also plays into the idea of the PlayStation still winning its generation, right, over Xbox and even Nintendo. Although
especially if you have gorgeous exclusive games like that.
And it was a game that a lot of people were very confused at what it was, but when one finally came out, it sort of cleared the way. And again, it was a darling of streamers because it played well, right? It had a lot of action, it had a good story. It had a female character in the form of Aloy, which everybody seemed to like. Although the game is third-person perspective, not first-person. And it's done very well. It's not perfect, but I think it's one of those games that I think that, let me see if it didn't win any of the awards in the Game Awards, but I should have won other awards. Oh, no, wait a minute. Well, a Game Critics Award in 2015 and 2016, but that's years before they actually. I don't. For the record, any award for a game that hasn't come out is not worth an award. Come on.
Yeah.
No matter how good the game ends up being, right?
I almost guarantee that Mass Effect Andromeda won an award for most anticipated game or something.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It also was a game not necessarily made in what we consider to be the traditional places, such as the United States or Japan or even Britain, right? They would think Guerrilla Games is based on is a Dutch first-party video game developer founded in 2000 as Lost Boys Games, based in Amsterdam, Netherlands. So, yeah,
Yeah, that game is on my wish list. I'm
yeah.
actually, I believe they've released some like a new DLC, so I'm kind of hoping that at some point they release like a Game of the Year edition or a definitive edition of some sort, as they're starting to call them now.
It's sort of yeah. Let's go back to the page and gameplay, development, release, reception. It got 89 out of 100, and Metacritic, of course, always take Metacritic with a huge truck salt, truck
Yeah.
full of salt because, but it did get some nines. GameSpot gave it a 9, which again, so overall it was well received. Mind you, of course, for some reason, 7 is supposed to be a low score or an average score in the US for some reason.
I don't know. I never understood that. We're thinking of like grade school grades. That's why.
Okay, under the Game Awards, which were last week, it was nominated for Game of the Year, Best Game Direction, Best Narrative, Best Art Direction, Best Performance, Voice Acting for Ashley Bush, and Best Action Adventure Game. But it won none of them, which is a shame. It really is. And this is according to Wikipedia, it surpassed No Man's Sky as the biggest launch of a new intellectual property on the PlayStation 4 and is the most successful launch in any kind on the PlayStation 4 since Uncharted 4 at Thief's End, as well as Guerrilla Games' biggest debut day. Now, the No Man's Sky news doesn't surprise me at all, but since Uncharted, that's some August company right there. It's the second best-selling game in the UK and the highest-selling PlayStation 4 game. Horizon Zero Dawn was also the best-selling game on PlayStation Store for that month. And as of March 13, 2017, the game has sold over 2.6 million copies worldwide. That's another aspect. It's like we're seeing other games selling tens of millions, 20 million copies and huge successes. But you have still games like this that at 2.6 million, they are a success. So it's sort of, it's a reality check for a lot of the things that are going on. So that was February. And then we go to March, where usually most of the games that are, shall we say, delayed come after. Among them, we have I Am Setsuna from the NS, Nintendo Switch, because it was also in March where we had. Was it March? Yeah.
It was March. It was early March.
Early March. It's not in the news here. It was in early March that, Nintendo Switch came out. So we're going to take a while talking about Nintendo Switch, which I don't have. I should have it, but I don't. Before it came out, people were like, what's this mobile stuff? I don't know. Kind of hardware this because it's gonna be in this little screen, and I don't know what Nintendo's doing. Nintendo's doing its wacky stuff they did with the Wii U, blah blah blah, which is reasonable considering what happened to the Wii U, right?
Yeah.
But now, and we're getting ahead of ourselves in news, but now at the end of the year, the Nintendo Switch, not to be confused with Twitch, has sold over 10 million units worldwide. That's something.
It is. And I don't think people were expecting the Switch to be as good as it is. Nintendo, from their words, weren't expecting it to be as good as it was or as successful.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it did have some problems. People were complaining that some of the Joy-Cons would break. And
they'd stop functioning. The receiver wouldn't work properly.
So, like any new consoles, and of course, Nintendo's inability to deliver enough of the consoles on a timely fashion. which is always a problem. Oh, and Nintendo was accused of engaging in artificial scarcity, however you say that. But I think this time around they were not taking any chances. They really wanted to deliver that the Switch in the stores as best as possible. Just that, and also they had a problem with Apple, I think, because Apple was releasing their new, as I always do every year, their new iPhone, and they use the same manufacturer as Switch was using in China, and so most of the parts that were manufactured in that factory were going to the iPhone and not to Nintendo's Switch. They got second priority, which meant, of course, no parts, no consoles, no delivery. And there's still places where I live, certainly. Of course, there's other reasons for that as well, which still have the Switch available to them. You have to order them by catalog. You can't, there's no stores that are selling them that I know of. So, yeah. And with it, of course, so this is basically the revival, at least temporarily, of Nintendo, right? Nintendo has come back. You have a Switch, right?
Yep.
So can you give us an idea of how it plays, and why do you think it's a good platform?
So I personally don't use it myself, but my boyfriend is really big into it. He loves having the portability, just being able to have it, take it anywhere. He just went on a trip, took it with him. Being able to play like essentially a home console anywhere is great, especially if you're feeling tired after a long day. You just take it to bed and just play a quick game before bed, or just, hey, you don't want to be sitting up, you don't have to. And if you do want to play on a large screen, you just dock it, pull the controllers off, and start playing it. And I think the biggest thing that's contributed to the success of the Switch is the selection of games. They knocked it out of the park with Breath of the Wild, which big RPG, gave you so much to do that it kept you preoccupied, that kind of make you forget that there weren't very many launch titles at the time. There were a few, not a whole lot though, not anything interesting. Here in the household we have that we picked up Binding of Isaac, which I think came out the following month, because my boyfriend's big into Binding of Isaac. But in terms of just it's really convenient. Essentially, it's a really convenient console.
So essentially, they were able to merge the power of a console and the portability of an iPad or similar devices.
Yes.
And also the games that came out looked good enough and were, played well enough in the system, right? So I think that's one of the things people were talking about the Wii U, is the Wii U felt kind of weird. Like, oh, you have these two screens, but I don't know why you're using the two screens. Where I think if you look the evolution of the Wii and the Wii U and the Switch, they're all part of the same. It's an evolution of concepts, right? It's easy to say, oh, these things are completely different and they're not related, but the Wii introduced the fact that first-party games for Nintendo are still going to be bestsellers, although that was happening for a very long time, and there was a market for a console for casual gaming, more than just a hardcore gamer of the Xbox or the PlayStation. Although anybody who plays PC is like hardcore gamers in consoles. Oh my god, PC master race, blah blah blah. Okay, chill, dude. And with the Wii U, they try to have that flexibility around the house where you can have your small screen, etc. The tablet itself was kind of hard to. I have grabbed the tablet before, and it just kind of reminded me of the original controller for the NES, which is something that you play for more than 5 minutes, and
it cramps.
And it's like, this is just a square, this big, brick. No, it's actually a tiny brick of hard edges and just not a lot of flexibility. And then you see in the Switch the idea of fun games for a wider audience with an extension of the portability. And also people were complaining, for example, that it used cartridges essentially, the modern version of cartridges. But again, it proved to be a winning combination for them. And another complaint that you said there were not a lot of games for the system, and usually that's a system killer. But the games that are there opening were good enough because we want to play these games and became system sellers, and then that convinced other people, like you said, a lot of indies, for example, we talked about this before, jumping in and go like, well, it's successful, they have a store, we want to go there, let's do this.
Exactly. And I freaking hope that PlayStation learns a lesson from this, because they pretty much could have had something similar with the PlayStation Vita, but they didn't market it properly, they didn't push it, and they didn't give it the support it needed, and it's slowly falling into obscurity. The only thing that's keeping that poor little console alive is the indie games and third-party games, which is sad because I love my Vita.
And then we have Nier Automata, another game from Platinum Games, for the PlayStation and for the PC, and it also became a critical darling with, let me see some of the ratings down here, 88 and 84 Metacritic. It got a couple of 9s from Destructoid and GameSpot, and videogamer.com, and even it won a Game Award for Best Score and Music, or Music. For a title whose one of the main characters basically is a walking panty shot, and created by someone who is, known for being very weird, as someone who walks around with a smiling moon mask helmet thing. It was received very well, and again, it's something that was a hit with streamers as well. I haven't. I think I may. The director is Yoko Taro. That's a man with the moon mask, and I haven't picked it up myself. I don't know if I will, because I like the combat and the action game sort of stuff. At the same time, not only I also know how it ends, and it has that, for me, that Japanese weird storytelling weirdness. When I go like, you're effing with me, aren't you? This is what you're doing. You took a shot and like, okay, and I don't know.
That's a game I want to eventually play once I able to get a copy of it and have the time to sit down and play it.
Yeah, and some of the twists and turns were predictable. Some of them were not. I think what's very interesting about Nier Automata is they were willing to take chances, right? They were willing to just blend different types of gameplay, and jump from one to the other and play with story. There's a lot of play with story and setting and the characters and your expectations, right? And it's not the game actually is not that long. I think it has and also Japanese games uses a lot of doing it for many years. It has multiple endings.
Yeah, so you're meant to replay it a couple of times.
See, and every time you replay it is or should be a different game, slightly different game, right? And it plays with repetition as well. It's like meeting the same people, but they're not really the same characters, and then you have other characters you can play with, and and of course it created a lot of erotic art as well. So that tells you how popular it is, according to our friend Chapelmon here.
Yeah. There's believe me, I think I've come across a few Nier Automata flash videos of some sort.
I don't expect the Nier Automata will make it to the Switch anytime soon.
No,
but
actually, I think there was something. Wasn't there a report when it first came out that you can see like the main character's anus or something around her underwear or something?
Yeah, they were wearing very skimpy underwear. You could see.
Yeah,
It was. It turns out to be mostly a hoax, but of course, it shows you sort of the some of the things that people were looking forward in this game, right?
Yeah, I believe it too. Like it looks very Japanese, and I wouldn't put it past them.
There's also, before we go into the game where everybody knows we're going to talk about, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, which what I remember of this game is a lot of people, and I played some of the earlier Ghost Recon games back in the Xbox OC and early 360, and they were okay, you know. Uh, and that's the thing that most people were like, yeah, this game is okay, but it sold very well. Um, and and there was even a controversy. It says March 2017, the Bolivian government expressed their dissatisfaction over the game's portrayal of their country as a violent narco state and filed a formal complaint to the French embassy in La Paz. Bolivia's Interior Minister Carlos Romero stated that the country has the standing to take legal action. Ubisoft responded with the following statement. Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon is a work of fiction, similar to movies or TV shows. Like all Tom Clancy games from Ubisoft, the game takes in a modern universe inspired by reality, but the characters, locations, and stories are all fantasies created solely for entertainment purposes. Bolivia was chosen as the background of this game based on its magnificent landscapes and rich culture, which the game never really showcases as far as I know. While the game premise imagines a different reality than the one that exists in Bolivia today, we do hope that the in-game world comes to close to representing the country's beautiful topography, and that players enjoy exploring the diverse and open landscapes it moves us to create. Yeah, Ubisoft, that's tone deaf.
Maybe they should have put that disclaimer at the beginning of that game that they put in front of all their Assassin's Creed game.
Created by a diverse group of people, blah 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 blah. Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna side with the Bolivian government on this one. I don't think they never sued, so according to what I'm seeing here. But it's like, yeah, well, you have a beautiful country, so you have a beautiful country here. We're gonna make a game in your beautiful country. We're not really gonna represent the culture of that country, but we're gonna show the beautiful mountains. Huh? And we're gonna show everybody being murderers, assholes, and narco traffickers. You happy with that? Okay. It's like, I mean, it's video games, but it's and that's one of the things that the ongoing conversation in video games, which is representation and cultural sensitivity and all these subjects. And I'm sure a lot of people were like, "Well, it's not a problem." But of course, then during this year, there was announced that Far Cry 4 was coming out, just to counterbalance this, and it was going to be set on a somewhat fictional,
like midwestern
mountain state in the Rockies, taken over by far right religious extremists, and you're playing the persons who shoot them in the face.
Yeah.
I take
but those people are Christian, so they can't be the bad guys, and they're white.
That's very interesting, which means probably a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's no problem. It's fiction when it's in Bolivia." What? No, dude. No, man. You can't. No, man. I go to church. My mom goes to church every Sunday. You can't. We just sing hallelujah. We're just cool people. You can't shoot us in the face, man. That's not cool, dude.
My thing isn't are all Tom Clancy games like based on books? Because isn't Tom Clancy an author or some sort?
We have Morris Minor on chat, and his comment is, "Maybe games are not meant for you." That's an interesting take.
Well, I think if you're easily offended.
True, that's true. But then again, I think it's a matter of Morris Minor. Welcome to the chat, and welcome to the program. It's also a matter of I guess if from Ubisoft perspective, like, yeah, if we're gonna be insensitive, and you can put quotes around that, even an asterisk, to one culture, we can be insensitive to all of them, right? I mean, We're not gonna care what people in Bolivia believe about being, typecast as narco traffickers, we're not gonna care about Americans, being typecast as a religious extremist, violent religious extremist. I mean, meth heads. It's like, and there's also the issue, and this is always going to be an issue of video games being art and being part of the media landscape. And while no game is gonna put a gun in someone's hand and drive them to kill someone else, like no song, no book, no individual movie. The truth of the matter is, they're part of a media landscape. And if the only message you get from games and movies and television is that people from Latin America, for example, are just drug dealers, just like if the only message you get out of white Southern or Midwestern people is that they're religious nut jobs, gun nut jobs, people are like, wait a minute, that's not who I am. But people are willing to believe that because that's the only thing they see, or at least the dominant view they see.
Yeah.
So maybe the games are not for me or for anyone else, but I bet you a lot of people play them anyway. They love them, and they had fun with them, and then they move on to the next shooter. It's more, I think, calling on the hypocrisy people complaining about, saying, "Oh well, this is perfectly fine because it's fictional," but when the spotlight swings to them, it's like, or near them, it's like, oh well, okay, never mind, And so we now come to the game everybody knows what we're going to talk about, and that's, of course, Mass Effect Andromeda, which dropped on March of 2017.
To critical acclaim? Question mark.
Came out for the Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. And why are we going to talk about this? Because we're fans of the series. Although that shouldn't be a reason for speaking of anything, but talking about games that were sort of meant for us, maybe? Question mark?
Yeah, but it was pretty big in the news, as well as how big of a disappointment it was.
Yeah.
Not as big as like the Mass Effect 3 ending, but pretty disappointing, and just how much of a dumpster fire the entire game was.
Let me read you chat. And then again, this is Wikipedia. I'm going to Wikipedia because it has everything, condensed. But of course, anything with Wikipedia, asterisk, put in. The reception from the critics. The Metacritic aggregate scores were in the mid to low 70s. The review scores, and we have to remember that in the way Americans usually, which lead to the review score still in most publications, rate things that anything below 7 is seen as bad, has pick 3 of them. Destructoid, 6.5 out of 10. Game Informer, much better, 8 out of 10. GameSpot, 6 out of 10. Games Radar, give it a 3.5 stars. PC Gamer, 80 out of 100. Polygon, 7.5 out of 10. And VideoGamer.com, 7 out of 10. So to say that the reception was mixed is to say quite a bit. And there were a lot of things people complained about. They were like, oh, the facial animations are not there. The writing doesn't compare to the original games. Even though, with the ending controversy of Mass Effect 3, one has to put a question mark on the rating of the original games, at least some part of it. For example, it quotes Ray Carcillo, or Carcillo, depending if it's Italian or Latin, from Electronic Gaming Monthly, described the game as broken and recall instances where it came to a halt, particularly during driving sequences, which were a big thing in the game because they were bringing back land vehicles as a way of moving around these huge worlds. Again, character facial animations were often referenced as part of the problem, with Game Revolution's Aaron Garst reflecting to Andromeda is full of bugs and technical oddities, from the freaky facial animations to the entire screen turning a lime shade of green for a few minutes. Many things went wrong during my playthrough. Now, my takeaway of Andromeda is really that it's become the poster child for the patching culture. Or it would be if No Man's Sky did not exist. In that it was a game that was launched, it was delayed, and it was launched incomplete, or at least not, well, not incomplete. It had all the parts to make the game. That's, I think, and for this game, it was not
Yeah.
stable. The launch, the version we got was not stable, and certainly needed more work. And we now know from different sources, looking back at the development of Mass Effect 3, that a lot of shortcuts were taken. About the first 2 years of development of a 5-year cycle, which is pretty long for any game in the industry, with all the stuff that had to be thrown away. We also know that now Electronic Arts is trying very hard to push their engine on everything. Their
Their Frostbite 3.
Their Frostbite engine, which was never designed for RPGs. They made it work in Inquisition, but it still has some bugs. Now Frostbite has to be on everything. And of course, again, jumping ahead later in the year, we now know that Mass Effect Andromeda as a single player experience is dead. Alongside the rest of the franchise, more or less. Because it didn't sell as well as expected. Now, we've given some numbers before about sales, but those tend to be physical sales tracked mostly in the UK. Another problem with the way of digital distribution is that, for the most part, all the people involved do not like to release numbers unless they're gigantic numbers or numbers that really benefit them. So when things go bad, they go like, yeah, well, it's sold. But
it's sold.
It's sold.
It sold a copy or two.
Yeah, people bought it. Yeah, people pre-ordered, so that's cool. Right?
And strangely, I don't know if these pictures are fake, but I've seen pictures of like copies of Mass Effect Andromeda in like Target shipping boxes that were just kind of cut open and put in, like, they were at Goodwills.
Mm-hmm.
Like a few months after the game launched, because they just couldn't get rid of them. I'm not sure those pictures are real or not, but I guess those count as sold games if they sold.
And looking for awards to games, and this is another thing: awards for games that before they came out. You have Golden Joystick Award 2016, Global Game Award 2016, and the Game Awards 2016 all nominated it for the most wanted game and the most anticipated game of the year. And it won 2 of those 3 awards. Video game industry, stop hitting yourself. It's like you're hurting yourself. Stop doing this.
Yeah, we need to like come up with an official like Razzies award, like show for like video games
awards.
Yeah,
we would have to have 2 types. We have a Razzie award type. I don't know, the broken diskette or something, for like the rotted CD for bad games, and the dusty diskette for award shows that give awards for games that never pan out. It's like Best in Show, which we're going to talk about when we talk about E3. Like, oh, this is Best in Show. This company won E3. It's like, with what? What did you win? Nothing.
A fully rendered CG trailer that was only like 30 seconds long.
You didn't win nothing. It's like, yeah, you have the best bull shot, which is short for bull, in the show, which probably cost you about $2 or $3 million to put together, which probably were $3 or $4 million you have to tack on the budget to the game without actually, increasing the actual budget of the game. Congratulations, you just played yourself. So, and Mass Effect Andromeda, it has been patched. They've done their best to fix it while they were allowed by EA to do so. It had, of course, a multiplayer horde mode in it, because everything has to have multiplayer these days. And that part of the game is still being updated. And of course, it has microtransactions. But because a lot of people didn't make the jump to multiplayer because of how they disappointed were with a single player, I'm just gonna throw out a guess and say that that's the reason why it got discontinued. At least patch-wise. And it also ultimately led to BioWare Montreal, which wasn't the original creator of the Mass Effect series, but studio attached to BioWare under EA's flag, or should I say, an EA studio under BioWare's flag that made mostly DLCs, was merged with EA's Motive Studios. And I think next week we're going to be talking about studio closings quite a bit, but not just yet. In August 2017, next we're going to cover that again next week. BioWare Montreal was merged with EA's Motive Studios, casting further doubt on the future of the Mass Effect franchise. And by doubt, it basically was a stake to the heart to the Mass Effect franchise. And if you want to know more about what I think about that, you can visit my channel on YouTube, Lessons Learned, and the death of a game, life and death of Mass Effect, to cover that subject.
Yeah, and actually, I think March marked my first new game purchase of the year for 2017, which was Styx and the Shard to Darkness, which wasn't as good as it's its first game. I actually haven't finished that game at all because I just kind of lost interest.
And it says here, and it has a link to it, that the Andromeda might have sold as much as 2.5 million physical copies in its opening quarter, resulting in $110 million in revenue and about 53 million in pre-orders. Which those 53 million could be part of the 110 million in revenue. And again, it doesn't account for digital sales, but the behavior of BioWare suggests that they were expecting to sell between 6 to 9 million units, so probably they didn't make their target goals. But again, we don't know this. Again, the problem, another problem with the industry that this game shows is, a lot of the obscurity related to it.
How often? What are the good expectations? Which are the bad ones?
Mm-hmm.
How reasonable are those expectations, and what do they base them off of?
And we had more releases on April. And I think of all the releases here, the one that, Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition came out. And it had a controversy because, it was controversy back in the day. It basically was a re-release for a game that was, years old and came out in 2011. Actually, came out in February 22nd, 2011 in North America. But I forgot the people that not work on it, but it was released for a key reseller. And I'm going to check who are the key Steam key resellers.
It wasn't Steam, was it?
No. And it wasn't Epic. It was G2A. And there was let me check because G2A Bulletstorm. Yeah, Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition, Steam Key Global to G2A. And the problem was that it was Gearbox who had Bulletstorm, and they partnered with G2A at a time where people were, now people are talking about loot crates and how time quickly flies and different news takes over the cycle. A lot of companies have been complaining about these Steam resellers as being basically crooks. And by Gearbox, and it's the ever so popular CEO of Gearbox, had to basically retreat when one John Total Biscuit Bain made his concerns heard. He's already had a sort of running feud with G2A. He is, by the way, partnered with another key reseller, but he claims, and it seems that it claims so far, stand to scrutiny, that key reseller is up to snuff. But I'll leave that to you. And Randy Pitchford, CEO of Gearbox Publishing, made the following demands out of G2A, which G2A did not make. I'm not going to give you the first bullet point. Before Bulletstorm Steam launch, G2A makes a public commitment to this. Within 30 days, G2A Shield, aka Customer Fraud Protection, that is, you have to buy a shield from them to guarantee that the copy of the Steam key is legit and not stolen. And not done either, stolen because often it's bought with stolen credit card numbers. So we talk about credit card fraud and then defrauding Steam as well. Is made free instead of a separate paid subscription service within terms offered by other major marketplaces. All customers who spend money deserve fraud protection from a storefront. To that end, all existing G2A Shield customers are notified by April 14th that fraud protection services are now free and they will no longer be charged by this. And that's just sort of the nature of the kind of demands that that Gearbox was making. G2A essentially said they kept silent and we're not gonna deal with it, and so they had, the game got pulled out. It's weird that it came out of a game that when it came out originally didn't, for the Xbox 360, wasn't a big seller, and and the re-release edition didn't include a lot of new stuff anyway.
Yeah, like new DLC. I believe there's some sort of a Duke Nukem thing related to it that was released for it.
And in fact, in the official Steam resellers list, G2A is not one of them. Green Man Gaming is, Amazon is, GameStop is, which is interesting. GameStop being also sort of still a competition to Steam, and Games Rocket, but no G2A, which tells you quite a bit. Another game that Bayonetta came out for Windows. Well, that's the Sexy Brutale. I heard quite a bit of it about it. People got of it indie, quirky game, narrative-driven
puzzle game. Yeah, it's on sale on PlayStation Network right now, actually.
And the remake of Yooka-Laylee.
So we're up to that now.
Yeah.
So that was the game I was hinting about that I believe has its Switch version is coming out this year or this month, I believe. Yeah, I kickstarted that game years and years ago, and I was thinking like, hey, I really enjoyed the Banjo-Kazooie games. I didn't replay them when they were. I didn't first play them when they were on the Nintendo 64, but I did play them when they were on the 360, and I enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hey, well, I would love to see more games like that, and threw my $25 at them or whatever, and I was pretty disappointed this year with it.
I think it shows the limits, like Mighty Number 9, and also shows the limits of both nostalgia and crowdfunding. We say Kickstarter as a sort of name brand, but it is crowdfunding, right? And while this year didn't have as many polemics around crowdfunding as past years, I think we sort of crested the wave when it comes to that. Although we probably talk about Patreon in the next episode, but we're not there. So that was April. What else was Full Throttle Remastered came out? Wonder Boy, Dragon Quest 2.
So I started playing Shyness, the Lightning Kingdom in April. Just a little neat, quirky RPG that random encounters the combat systems like a brawler, which was kind of fun and different.
Hmm. And we will end the show with, of course, May, because May is the month of E3. And E3, well, actually, not a thing happened in B3. There were a couple of announcements. There was a big push for Battlefront 2, which, of course, it seems as a foreshadowing of things to come. And I encourage everyone to go back and watch the opening, especially the opening of Battlefront 2, because it opens literally with a tweet from Boyega, which is the plays Finn in the movies, in the new movie series, essentially saying, "Will Battlefront 2 have a single player, campaign, something that's called a story campaign?" And the way it was positioned was like, "Oh, we're listening to you, and we're gonna make a much better game than the last one." I don't want to discuss too much about Battlefront per se, because we're probably going to talk a lot about that next week. But suffice it to say that, well, it didn't bode well. So let's give a quick look at E3 2017, and some of the announcements that were made that year, according to TechRadar. You said something about Devolver Digital. I think was also the big show that year.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, I think they. I'm surprised we're not replaying their segment of throwing money literally at the screen to give it to people, because that's pretty much what they want now.
Another thing was that E3 saw the return of Nintendo to E3. Nintendo sort of been skirting around the edges of E3, partly because of the cost. But now, with I guess they were confident enough in the original sales of the Switch that by this time saying, we have to hit E3.
Well,
right.
they weren't actually at E3 as their own entity, though. They were there with the Ubisoft.
Oh yeah, because
weren't they?
For an Mario Kingdom Rabbids.
Yep.
And that's the thing, is like the things about E3 that most people now can remember are the quirky things that Ubisoft did with Nintendo, which seem uncharacteristic both for, more for Nintendo than for Ubisoft. Ubisoft does have a couple of games outside of Assassin's Creed, actually. They have more than that. But the fact that Nintendo would allow one of their most central properties, being Zelda being the other one, to be paired up with this other property and have a third party developer design a game like this, which by the way proved to be pretty successful, was another big risk. And Japanese companies, especially Nintendo, are not known for taking big risk.
Yeah. And another big announcement at the Ubisoft was the announcement of Beyond Good and Evil 2, or at least they had a really long CGI trailer, which again they did like many years ago.
Beyond Good and Evil, and a lot of people were like confused because it seemed that it was sort of trying to make Beyond Good and Evil more adult.
Yeah.
A lot of swearing, even the graphics were very grimy. Well, we don't know. I mean, that was a game that has been in nearly vaporware for years, and well,
in later news, we kind of heard that we're gonna make procedurally generated levels and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's not what Beyond Good and Evil was to begin with. So we got Sony pretty much. I remember their conferences being kind of quiet. Like it just kind of came and went, even though they had some interesting things. The biggest one I can remember is a God of War Logan edition.
Yeah. And Microsoft did make a big push for Xbox One X. It also got revealed, which now it's on sale. but it, and they were like, oh, this is the, and that's sort of the line compared to if you compare the Xbox One X compared to say the Switch was like games, color, fun, portability. Microsoft was like power, power, power. We have the most powerful console out there, which is interesting because last time around, and this goes in cycles, right? You have now Sony playing it safe with their half console, their upgraded half console, and you have Microsoft saying, no, we're gonna put a console that is more powerful because our last console was underpowered, and now it's gonna be games, 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 games. But again, some of the games that they put out there, like Forza, well, again, we will see some problems with that down the line because again of microtransactions. But we are now up to the end of the hour, and we should leave some things for next week, shall we? So I'd like to thank Morris Minor for showing up in the chat. Anybody else who's been listening, as always, if you want to see Chapelmon, where can we find you?
You can find me at Chapelmon pretty much anywhere. I'm at Chapelmon_Aragon on Twitter. And that's pretty much it.
And you can find me as Rafa Writer on Tumblr and on Twitter, and you can find me as Lesson Learn here on Twitch and on YouTube. I'm now also doing another regular show on Saturdays called, for those people who like tabletop RPGs, called Hacking the Fifth, or as I call it in YouTube, Expanding the Fifth, because the algorithms themselves don't like the idea of hacking for some reason. Where we talk about hacks, homebrews, and home rules for the Dungeons and Dragons the fifth edition of Dungeons and Dragons tabletop RPG. So thank you for joining us. I hope you have a lovely night and also have a happy and wonderful holidays. Thank you very much, and good night.
Good night, everybody.